Thanks, Mike. Morning, everybody, or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. So today's presentation is on performance, load, and reliability testing, and what it is, why it matters, and what I've learned about the importance of doing it and how to do it right over the course of a 25-plus year software engineering career. So let's start off with what we're talking about here. So performance, load, and reliability testing have in common the fact that we are testing hopefully realistic environments with realistic amounts of data under realistic load conditions. The thing that we're measuring is different. In performance, we're measuring things like response time and resource utilization typically, or throughput and resource utilization. In load and reliability, usually we're looking more at mean time between failure, how long it stays up, availability issues, and in some cases in load testing you're also looking for functional correctness under load. That again, all share in common the concept of the system being placed under some sort of realistic simulation of loaded conditions and then assessed for proper behavior. Now, these are important things to do for a number of reasons. Performance problems tend to result in some fairly significant user dissatisfaction. They can result in user errors when they don't respond correctly to a slow system and they start pounding away on buttons or keys trying to get things to happen. And in the case of, say, e-commerce sites and so forth, there's a significant risk of lost business as people simply navigate away from your site to a competitor's site when your site gets slow. Now, in terms of load testing, when a system fails under load in production, notice that means that load is generated by other users. So basically that means that at the point at which the most people are trying to get benefits out of your system, they become all simultaneously unable to use the system. So the impact of failure under load is actually maximized, not minimized by this, and so it's certainly something to be concerned about. And this reliability problems in general will potentially damage your reputation in your business. If you've got a system that is not stable and it has problems, then you'll attract dissatisfaction, and eventually people will probably move to competitors. So, think about this from a risk point of view. If you think about things that could happen, bad things that could happen in terms of slow performance, failure to handle load properly, or failure to operate reliably, most organizations can identify some fairly significant risks here. So if people respond, you say, well, we need to do some performance, load, and reliability testing, and the response is, why should we worry about that? How bad could it be? Identify some risks and make people aware of that, because we do see clients that are often unaware of the exposure that they have here. Okay, so let's look at some examples of stuff that has gone badly due to failure to attend to these performance, load, and reliability risks. E-commerce is the old saying about your competitors are always one click away, and if you look at an e-commerce site and you know that your customers will tend to abandon a shopping cart if it's slow, and you know that 10% are going to abandon, how long can you stay in business? Once a customer has abandoned a site and decided to go elsewhere, they're liable to stay with that competitor unless that competitor similarly dissatisfies them. So if your competitors don't have problems here and you do, guess what? That's basically a drain on your customers, and one that's not likely to be easily recovered from. At one point, I was talking to a colleague of mine in Europe, and he was talking about was one of his clients, which was a bank, and they had estimated that their average cost of a field failure was over 100,000 euros, and so failure in production. And most of these problems that they were suffering from were actually performance, load, and reliability related. So, you know, this can have very significant financial consequences for a lot of organizations. Now, this is a while ago, but some of you may have heard of this incident. This is a famous performance testing or failure to performance test incident. Victoria's Secret, the lingerie shop, in 1999 did a internet holiday lingerie show, which it's a great idea. You know, they're doing this in November to spark sales, but unfortunately they did not execute very well on this idea because the servers were not able to handle the level of load, and worse yet, they were not able to throttle off incoming connections as the performance started to suffer under load. So rather than maintaining an acceptable level of performance for those users who were lucky enough to get connected, everybody's performance degraded and the servers were crashing and people were going away and coming back and so forth, and it was a big black eye for them rather than being an enormous PR coup, which was of course what they had in mind. So, you know, you certainly don't want to succeed in bloodying your own nose when you were looking to make yourself look good, and that's exactly the kind of thing that can happen when you don't do adequate performance and load testing. More serious note, moving on from lingerie, there was a phone system that was introduced in the UK that had some, for emergency calls, and it had some rather significant reliability problems. And this resulted in problems with dispatch of ambulances, and ambulances didn't arrive in time. And you know, you can imagine that that's not a good situation. There were actually fatalities associated with reliability problems with this system. So these are some examples. Of course, you need to think about what can happen for your particular system and understand those risks and help other people understand them, because, well, the investment required to do this properly is significant, as you'll see as I go through these next few slides. The impact of these problems, should they actually occur, is similarly significant, and appropriate attention is required. So I'm going to go through and talk about 5 lessons that I've learned that have been particularly important for me in terms of performance, load, and reliability testing, and that we've seen over and over again with a lot of our clients. I make no representation that this is an exhaustive list. I don't think anybody can give you an exhaustive list of everything you need to attend to in this area, but I do think that this is a list that contains certainly some of the most common lessons that need to be learned in order to do this right, as well as typical mistakes that are made in these areas. Now, these are real case studies. They come from real projects. They're not hypotheticals. I've kept my clients' names anonymous, but they're all based on actual experiences, good or bad. So here are the 5 lessons. Production-like test environments are important. Loads and transactions that model real-world scenarios are important. Testing your tests is important. Using the right tools is important in an efficient way. And getting started on these performance, load, and reliability issues early rather than waiting until the very end is really, really important. So let's go through these lessons and illustrate them. Let me start with the realistic environments. This is one that people are seldom keen on hearing this, but it is very important that performance, load, and reliability testing be done in environments that realistically approximate the production environment. Now, people always bring this up, and no matter where I am. I was in Malaysia having a discussion with people there last week, and this very point came up. Well, why can't we just use scaled-down models? Now, that